Okay, anyway. So, a bigger lesson that I feel like I've learned is that it has taken me a long time to form an opinion and to have enough information to be able to say anything. And there's a lot of people who blanketly go on and around and walk around society, and they don't have individual experiences, because they're kind of like falling blanketly into others' preformed narratives. It's the people who watch Matt Walsh's content and video, and they can consume conservative content and commentary, and they believe that it is right simply because they have established credibility. Like, there are some things that they are familiar with in their own lives, and they hear these conservative commentators validate their real life experiences, and that is where the credibility is formed. But the just because Matt Walsh, or really anyone, even a liberal commentator, says something, that doesn't mean that it like automatically applies to me or you. Just because they say it, like, that isn't how it works. That isn't like truth. So then why do we have so many people who do believe that that's truth? And the reason that I'm coming to say this is because, like, I really appreciate the fact that I took the time. I'm like appreciating myself. I'm appreciating that I took the time to like clip in that post from yesterday, or do the snip. It wasn't from yesterday. It was from like 3 weeks ago. But yesterday is when I posted it. But the snip, it really grounds a point, or it explains a point of view, which is that if you haven't seen something done before and you personally have no examples of it ever happening, there's this idea in your mind that it doesn't exist, that it isn't real. This is another reason why I continue to say, like, representation is so important. When for so long we had American media producing derogatory images of Black bodies, including like Black women as being like hypersexual, ugly mammies, okay, and then we had images of emasculated Black males with no personality and how do you say, an affinity toward servitude. When those are the images that are propagated, people from other groups are looking at new instances of like Black people, and they're assuming, oh, they're like that image that I've seen. The reason that my YouTube channel matters, even though it's small as shit, is that like other people in society now are going to look at girls like me, girls with poofy hair, girls with brown skin, and they're going to be like, "Oh shit, they actually might have similar." They're not going to probably say this for sure, because I always introduce a moderate sense, and I just have questions about ideas, but they might affiliate that new girl who looks like me to have a similar ideology to me, because they can put it as a frame of reference with something that they already know. Um, that is why representation matters. That is also why the January 6th riots were just scary as shit to me, because it was I am not a person who frequently attends riots or protests. I think I've been to two, like, in my life, but I'm not really a protester. And I think when I think back, I remember when people would joke about people making tweets, the Twitter users who would tweet about um, an issue, and people were saying, "This is not political. This doesn't matter." And I would just kind of push back and say, no, that isn't true. Um, Pushing back on Instagram, an Instagram post, a Twitter post, anything written, a blog post, a YouTube video, those are artifacts um, that can be shared and distributed to other people, which other people can see, they can read, it can change their mind so that they understand or introduce an alternative point of view to the one that they currently hold, because it is very possible in their personal life they have never been exposed to an ideology quite like yours. That is where like Twitter activism is real activism. Because I would almost argue, like, at this point, and this is why, like, I'm not a person who goes to protests and riots. Like, why? I suppose I understand why they're necessary, because, like, when you have hundreds, if you have thousands of people who are literally leaving their homes and marching down the streets with signs, and they're all kind of on the same political side on some issue, it becomes very apparent to political parties that people care, that real people in the real society, people with jobs and homes and families and safety, care about this issue, and they want some sort of policy to change. They want someone to be sentenced so that they can experience a better society. Like, society has become as good as it is because of all of those people and those protests and those Twitter protests and those blog posts and those video essays. Like, they seem like they're not doing anything to some people, and I feel like there's a large majority of us who understand just how impactful those things really are, because they have been seriously impactful in our own lives. Like, I really think that Khadija Mumboe's video essays have changed my life for the better. She is given words and concepts and ways of talking and speaking that really reflect like who I aim to be, and the in-depth way that I would like to explain an idea. And the really cool thing about this is, for so long, that sort of rhetoric and that sort of thinking has been preserved in like institutions, like collegiate institutions that are not accessible to everyone. YouTube is actually pretty accessible to everyone. You can just watch a video, okay, and from that video, you can take what you're going to take from it. Now, if you watch one Khadijah video, obviously you're not, and you haven't read any of the essays that she puts in the description box, yeah, you might not understand, you might not have most of the context that most of us have who've been here and watched all of the videos and read all of the articles and really understand where she's coming from. This is another reason why I also want to make it like very clear to people who are watching my channel and are like, this is weird. Like, there's just a girl who like goes outside and eats or something, and sometimes she talks about like ideas. um there is so much space. Like, I don't script my essays right now just because I live in the real world, and that's something that most women don't. Like, I have a job, but I've pretty much always had a job. I'm gonna have a job. Like, I work and I earn money and I pay bills, and like I vote, okay, and like I produce content, and clearly like I influence a few people, and that is powerful for me, and it isn't necessary for it to be like powerful for you. I'm not really trying to influence you. What I'm trying to do is alert you that my point of view exists, it is real, and like you might disagree with it. I want you to know that there's someone like me who's alive who disagrees with you. If you disagree with me, you might actually disagree with me and be like, "Oh wow, this is interesting." That's a point of view. That's a real point of view. Also, I feel like I don't it's hard to put words to, for me at least, but sometimes when you're not like specifically on the left and you're like a liberal who's like break the whole establishment, and you're also like not a conservative who's like, oh my god, bring us back to the 50s, and you're somewhere in the middle, there's not very much content around people who are in the middle, especially like black people who are in the middle who are kind of like making sense, and I want to be one of those people. I want to be one of those people. There's actually a video I saw yesterday from Destiny Ute, and it was about um how to what was this video about? I think it was about like singleness or something. Why women are staying single, but there are a few guys. The point is there are a few guys who are basically. Oh, yes, it was about finance. So there's a black woman who posted a video about finance, and she was like, only in the black community do people talk about finance. And that's such an, I don't know where she got that from. It was very clear that like she has been in a predominantly black community for her life. And so in her experience, like she is familiar with black people talking about finances, but it's clear maybe she doesn't have experience around other people from other races and what goes on in their household, which is sad. But also, like, I feel like there were a lot of people who kind of gave her a little, like, uh, check, like, girl, you're wrong. Like, where are you getting this? This doesn't make sense. They were basically like, you're wrong. That's not true. And they're right. Like, I don't know where she got that from. All people who are adulting and who pay bills and who live in a home are going to talk about finances. Even if a woman isn't like bringing in any money, typically like she's going to have to know something about the money because she's going to have to hold money at one point to like buy gas, buy groceries, buy shit, right? And like there's not an unlimited amount of funds. Like there's literally always, for working class people, there's a limit on what you can buy. There's a limit on what you can do because there isn't, like, money is scarce, especially like if every person isn't working. And for a lot of like lower income families, moms are staying at home and they need to be in the workforce. I understand there's a lot of like labor, physical labor that happens in the household and that needs to be taken care of, but the problem, or one guy makes a really good point. um Most women work, and I feel like I've been saying this too. Most women in society are working, in American society are working. It is just that in upper middle class communities, the women are skilled laborers. So they have like degrees, like law degrees, or they have nursing degrees, or some other degree that requires like an education for them to perform that act of labor. And so they're higher wage earners. But in those households, that means that the father is working and the mother is working, so there's two incomes, and typically like you're gonna bring in around like 150 to $200,000 for those families with two people who are like skilled laborers who are working. That's kind of like the ideal American situation. And it felt like this woman is not familiar with that. And the thing is, like, she was talking about it like it's brand new. And that's how you know, that's how you have to talk about like social class differences and who are like social climbers and who's like been here for a while. Like if you've grown up in a middle class community, not lower middle class, like that's another thing and I have to keep talking about this. Like in most black communities, um even if both people were working, because their wages were so low and because of a lot of things like redlining and housing segregation, like black people who were like middle class were lower middle class, which is like pretty close to being poor. So the way that they're living is like pretty close to poverty. It's basically poverty. Like they're not, like, that takes away from the middle class experience. So if you are actually privileged enough to like live the middle class experience, then you can just look around and see that like in every household, like the women have graduated from college. The women have degrees. The women are like using their like intellect and like their skills and ability to like build shit and do shit that's like bringing in money to the house, and like a significant amount of money. Like you might not, you everyone likes to shit on nurses because like it's like so common for women to be nurses, but nurses are bringing in like $80,000 a year, which is like nothing to like shit on. Like you can live off $80,000 a year USD. Like That's a nice amount of cash. Or if you're talking about women who are attorneys, okay, like attorneys are what, like especially if you're starting at a pretty moderate law firm, you might be bringing in like $150,000 a year. That's no laughing matter. Or like consultants, engineers. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole bunch of different things that women can be, but they're like going out and being that, and they're bringing in money, like real money, and it's no laughing matter. So I got there by talking about a video that I watched yesterday. I'll put that video actually in the description box so you can go watch that video for yourself if you haven't seen it. I think it's a pretty interesting conversation. But also, I guess my point here is that, like, I just want other black women to be aware that sometimes, even if you're, because so many people are making this like pro femininity content. Oh, I'm so female. Oh, I'm so this. Oh, I'm that. Look, I'm just pretty. Oh, I'm pretty. And they're kind of like diminishing their intellect to play up their prettiness. I'm not like, I don't think that immersing yourself into bimboism is going to get you very far. But if you want to do it to be cute, I appreciate the content that is just like pretty black girls doing things. Like we do need more content of that. But also like it is, as a person living in the world, especially if you occupy a black body in America, just realize, and I mean like in a very honest way, that there are a lot of people who are lost, and it's because they don't have any role models. They don't have any examples. So the things that they're doing are, they're doing things that they see in the world, that they see in society, and they don't see people thinking and talking about ideas, having conversations about money, talking about economics or partnerships or healthy relationships or therapy or like just society, really society. Like we live in us in a world with other people, and as you saw with that guy who's like burning a Black Lives Matter flag, there are still a lot of people who don't think that Black Lives matter. They don't, Black lives don't matter. And something that I thought was interesting, and I don't know if I think Khadijah actually brought this up, which I think is makes so much sense. Um, she said, you might not be the target of white supremacists as a black woman because you are a bit lighter complexioned, and like you are not male, and so you don't pose the same threat that, you know, a black male who's competing for like space and resources and really like, how do you say, civilian status, right? As the males do. You just don't hold the same space. So like what you, they could be kind to you because you're not a threat. And I feel like I continue to find myself in that space where like it's not really necessary for me to be political, because like people look at me and they just assume that I'm like biracial. They always say like, "Oh, I have a family member who's like you." Like I'm like the black family member in a white family. That isn't my reality, right? But like that's the way that some people see me. And I feel like that is also like a problem, because what it does is place this like respectability politics bubble around suitable blackness while still criminalizing general blackness. And the criminalization of general blackness in America is a problem, and I feel like it is kind of like the problem. And it's also, I feel like, a major reason why so many people are deciding to like leave. That's why like I'm saving to go live in Africa next year. I feel like I'm actually not on the boat of like trying to change American ideologies in any way. Like when I was, you know, I guess newer to activism, I did feel that way. I was like, "Oh, it'll be great. I'll change things." And I felt like people have the capacity to change. I don't feel that way anymore. I don't think that people have the capacity to change. I think that most people don't care, and I don't think they will start to care, and I think they don't even have like the capacity to understand how change works, and how, especially like unlearning some of the like in like people being sentenced for this like seditious stuff and whatever these like the conspiracies are, right? That the January 6 people or Tory Lanez, or there was another guy who committed a rape and he got like 35 years. Like the reason that it is critical, like if I feel like if this country has any hope of like moving forward in general, that is the bare minimum because um women, I feel like women actually across the board at this point understand how unsafe it is for them. And something that scares the shit out of me about like black American men is like they don't think that like Sexy Red or Megan the Stallion has anything to do with them. They don't see how that Takia girl who got shot at the grocery store, they don't understand what it has to do with them. They play this game, the girl who got hit with the rock in her face. They don't see, they don't think that that's related to them at all. And they keep playing these like separation games. Oh, ha ha, laugh at black women. Ha ha ha. She shouldn't have been disrespecting. She shouldn't have been right. All the red pill bros on here talking about how women should behave. Women should do this. Oh no, she's not marriage material. He's not this. She doesn't have that. You need to do this. All these things, right? In my personal opinion, and as far as relationships go, especially relationships in modern day developed world, you need to find some shit that works for you, and you can only find that shit after you've established like some boundaries for yourself and you actually have like the bare minimum for yourself. If you don't have a job in an apartment yet, you shut the fuck up. Nobody cares what you think or what your ideals or morals are. Like you're not a participant in society yet, which is like 80% of these like podcast bros, like all of them. How do you have this much time to make a podcast if you're actually like working and doing shit in the real world? There's just not that much time. This is why, like, another reason I can't spend millions of hours and shit on this channel right now, because I actually have like a job and other shit going on in my life that I have to do. I don't have the time. How are they pulling this time out of thin air? Be serious. Also, like, nobody gives a shit. Like the people anyway, so I feel like what I was getting at is the reason why abortion basically is a political topic that is actually up for debate right now and why it's so important. I feel like women in general, women in regular society, like if you're not an A-list celebrity basically who lives in like the real world, you understand that like promoting some man just shooting any woman gives other men the permission to shoot women, and they are going to do it. Like if they did not sentence Tory Lanez to anything, and we already actually have a ridiculous amount of women dying at the hands of men. You can believe it, you cannot believe it. I found another YouTuber who talks about like her toxic relationship, but the reason she left her marriage is because like her husband choked her out one night. She almost died. He had choked her so hard her feet had lifted off the ground. And like sometimes y'all are like sitting here in society and you're seeing people post these great pictures together and they're trying to like craft a narrative online for you to see that makes you feel aspirational about whatever. And don't get me wrong, because I also don't want to like realize this idea that like all men in society are so awful, because there are some good guys. It is not most or all though. Most of them are trash violent offenders, and they are like beating their girlfriends as soon as the door closes. They are like raping, they're doing all type of crazy shit, and y'all, for some reason, like the male community who knows about this doesn't care. The female community who's being literally like victimized and targeted doesn't have the capacity to speak out about it. So what we have are like people like me who's kind of seen it firsthand and just tried to escape it. And then when I say I'm saying try to escape it because like I've been very close to domestic violence a few times, like very close. Um, and that is when I realized like I I could lose my real life. I could die. Um, and I won't be coming back, once I die. So I better like take this seriously. And that's when I thought about my personal safety. And that my womanhood is pretty much predicated around my personal safety. And the reason that I have to start caring about politics is because there are certain issues that are jeopardizing my personal safety. That's all I'm going to say for right now, but I'll be back tomorrow with more thoughts.